All right, guys. My name is Richards. Good morning to everyone, and we're going to be looking at Terraform integration testing, right? So I've written my Terraform um, ACL codes configuration for the deployment of an Elastic Kubernetes service on AWS, and it's modularized. So this is actually the Terraform directory, but I'm going to run it through so we can see how the directory is set up, right? So I'm just going to say cd into my EKS deployment. I have a folder. First of all, let me just show this here. I think I have a folder called the EKS deployments. Yes. So I'm just going to cd into my EKS deployments. All right. Then I clear this. So if I run it free here, you're going to see the structure of my Terraform deployment, right? So I have my environment. So I have my module, right? So in the module, I have the EKS and I also have the VPC. So the VPC provides the network structure for the deployment of the EKS. So, and if you look very well, you can see that in each of this module, because I'm running a unit test, right? I have the test file for the EKS, and I also have the test file for the VPC as well. So what I'm going to be doing is just walk through the configuration for the test file and for the EKS and also the test file for the VPC, and then run the Terraform test to actually see to demo how the it works, right? So I'm just going to go over to the module right now, and then I'm going to the EKS, so the test file. So here it is, okay? So now, what I've been able to do here is to write simple Terraform test cases, right, for my EKS deployment. So the first thing I'm going to do is to pass my mock variables. So those mock variables is like, okay, these are the variables that I want to put into in the creation of my cluster, okay? And I'm gonna have a series of run blocks. Those run blocks is gonna run a command, either apply or plan. So by default, the run blocks actually for unit testing runs the command to be applied, but I just want to check it against the test, right? So what's gonna happen is that it's going to check this test for this command against the module, the test outcome of the module. So it's going to look at it and compare and say, oh, okay, this is nice. Oh, no, this is not good, and then give you an error if there's any situation like that. So I'm doing the same. I'm doing a run test for the cluster version. So I want to check the cluster version. So currently, the cluster version is set to the current version of Kubernetes, which is 1.33. Okay. So though we can have a series like an array of allowed clustered version, which could range from 1.31 to 1.33, right? So anything out of that range would actually result in an error. So the next thing we want to do is to check the cluster name. So the cluster name it has to match a particular pattern, right? Depending on your organization. So the pattern could be irrespective to the environment you're deploying to. If you're deploying to your test environment, it has to be in the naming pattern. It has to show test, either dev or production. And if you didn't have anything like that, it's going to end up in error as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is to check the region. So it depends on your organization. You want to deploy to a particular region, right? You want it to either be US West 1, West 2, West 3. So all of these are just like guardrails or gates to check against whatever you're deploying to ensure that the values you're passing into your deployment meets the organization compliance, right? You're gonna see the stuff later on. So the last one that I have here is to check for valid instances. So, um, just to make this clear, right? My I'm running my I'm deploying this Elastic Kubernetes services into a free AWS account, right? So I am restricted in the kind of the type of instances that I can deploy. And when I run the CLI against the AWS region, I got a um, couple of these instances available. There are more than this, but these are the ones that I just picked at, right? So the check is just to ensure that all the value that you're passing through the deployments are going to be true, right? So when we check through, when we run the condition, we want to check that you're either using a T3 small, a T3 micro, a T4G small, or a C7 flex large, right? Anything out of that is going to throw an error, right? So right now I'm just going to test this, right? I'm going to run the test for this EKS module. And when we test for the EKS module, we're going to review the outcome, the test results, right? So now I'm just going to check Terraform. I'm just going to say Terraform empty to format the. Okay, this looks all good. And then I'm going to clear this right now. And the next thing I'm going to do is to let me validate my Terraform to ensure that everything, the configuration is valid. It's going to take some time and then it's going to check if there's any error. It's going to point out the error, then we fix that error. But if there's none, it's fine. We could go ahead. But then there's something that I need to do. I have to go into the directory, the module directory that I want to. So I'm just going to do I think the EKS here is where I want to go into, and then also check if I still need to do a little bit of formatting as well. Although that has already been formatted from the root directory, so everything is good. So what I'm going to do next now is to run the Terraform test, right? So the Terraform test is actually going to run a test against the it's going to check the this input value against the test cases that we've written for this deployment. Okay, so I'm just going to run this right now, and then I'll save Terraform test. Let's see what happens here. So I'm going to take this a little bit upward so we can have a better view of the results, right? So it's currently in progress. It's testing. Okay, so right now the first test was successful, the last test was also successful, and everything was successful. So we have four success and zero failed. Now let's try to see something. What about if for some reason we decide to name our cluster some other name and it's not really what the organization wants? What's going to happen here? So instead, I just want to say I don't want to have dev in my name. I just want to use Richard Cluster, right? Or I just want to say Richard um production instead of prod, right? And I don't want to use a T2 micro. I want to use I want to add, let's say I want to add like a T3 medium, right? C3 medium. Of course, we can use a C3 medium is a very good you know, let's see. T3 medium is one of those instances in AWS as well. So let's just see what's gonna happen here if we're going to have any fade test again. So we're going to run this test again to see what's going to happen here now. I'm going to say Terraform test again, and let's see what's going to happen if we're still going to have everything to be success or failure. All right, awesome. So it's currently checking through. It's going to start with the cluster version, the name first. Interesting. So we had a failure. We had one fail. Hmm. So we have the instance fade. Okay, so T3. So we had the instance fade for the T3. So what happened is that we are not supposed to use this T3 because it's not in it's not part of the list, the array of instances that we're supposed to use. Okay, so that actually led to its failing. All right. So that's awesome. So the next thing I'm gonna do is to move ahead to my deployment. But for now, I just want to check the okay, so that's actually fade, right? So what we're gonna do is to try to also fix that and then try to cause another error again. Now the cluster name actually passed as well because it's expected to pass. If you look at our regis here, our regis said prod, right? And if you look at our name, you can see that there's prod here. Okay, so if we want to do something else, we can try to force this to fade by doing something like say um I'm gonna call this let me just say let's look for something else. Let's look for another name, right? So Richard's EKS cluster. Let's call it deployments. So yeah, I think deployments. Yeah, deployments is a good name, right? So one of the difficult things in tech is naming stuff, right? So okay, so Richard's EKS cluster deployments. Now we're gonna run this again, and I'm also gonna correct this, right? We've already seen that we don't need a T3 medium because it's not allowed in the organization to use a T3 medium instance, right? So I'm going to remove this, right? And I'm saving this. So I'll clear my terminal right now, and then I'll run my Terraform test again. So I'm just going to go and say Terraform test, and let's see. Oh, okay. I have a little bit of error here. So it didn't even run the test. It just went to config to check the syntax, right? So we have a kind of like syntax error. So I'm going to click this again, and then I'm going to run Terraform test. All right. So let's see. So right now we're trying to make the cluster name fair. If the cluster name doesn't match what we want, it's going to fail. Let's see. Awesome. Exactly what I was saying. So the cluster name fade, and then all the rest test passed, right? So how about what if we can try? All right, I think we've done a lot of tests. Yeah, region. Let's try the region as well. Okay, so let's try the region and see if we use another region. Let's see what other region can we try. Let's see what we have in our test here. The allowable region is East 1. So let's try East 2 and see what if US East 2 is gonna throw an error as well. So let's say the organization doesn't have any operation in US East 2, but we're trying to deploy to US East 2. Definitely that's going to give you an error, but we have to test that out to be sure, right? So I'm going to run the test again. I'm going to click this now, and then I'll run the test again. Okay. So we have various test cases. We want to see what's going to happen. Awesome. So that's going, working. And then we have two failed cases and two pass, right? So the instance was correct, the version was also correct, the name failed because we're using deployment, right? We're using deployment, it didn't match any of these ones. And also the region failed, we're using is2. So you see that all EKS cluster must be deployed to one of the supported region. So the supported region, is either US East 1, US West 2, US Central. I think I have to write a better error message for that because the error message didn't really explain what region we need to deploy to. So I'm just going to modify that a little bit more to make it more better so we can have a better error message, right? So I'm just going to make this to any of this region. Yeah, so exactly what I wanted. So I'm just gonna save this. All right, with this, we'll just move over to the VPC, right? So we can see what we have for the VPC. I'm gonna close this one and then move over to the VPC test, right? So just go over to the VPC and click on the test for the VPC. So I'm gonna clear my screen right now. So for the VPC, what we did here is kind of like different, but it's the same idea, the same framework, right? So but sort of different because we just wrote one test case just one test case that runs across different, they have different assertion statements for um, the variables, the attributes of the VPC, right? So you can see we already set in these to decider block, right? We did some hard coding there, which we're going to change later on to make it more dynamic. And then we change this to false. So let me leave this as true because in our configuration we have it as true. So I just want to match what is actually inside the VPC module. So I'm going to open that so you can see what we have in that module as well. So you can see this is actually set to true. Yeah, it's set to true. So, but in my test, I also have to set it to true. So, okay. So we also have for the VPC tags, we're going to check if the tags are correct. Okay. And what more do we have? We're just going to check if tags are applied to, if tags are applied to the tag that I applied to the Kubernetes cluster is referred to as shared tags, okay? It has this shared here. So I'm just going to go ahead to do the test as well. First of all, I'm just going to do Terraform FMT just to check. Okay, I need to move over to the VPC. Um, I need to move over to the VPC module, then to the right directory. Then I'm just going to check Terraform FMT to see if this is well formatted. Okay, that's good. So next thing I'm going to do is to just run the test and let's see how the outcome is going to be like, what the result is going to be. Awesome. So it's in progress. And then we have some failures. We have some failures. Let's see what's happening here. Okay, I didn't actually save this. I'm gonna save this, right? So it's picking up the previous states, right? So what happened here was the fact that I actually had it to the actual is true, but then I actually did not save my file before running this. So I'm just gonna clear this and then run this again. So we're supposed to have the true test. So the true test is actually currently showing true right now. Yeah, so this is true and this is true. So it ought to pass, right? So when I'm actually going to go back and change it to false so it's phase as well. So right now everything passes because my DNS is actually set to true and my DNS hostname, DNS support, both of them are set to true as well, and the tags are all applied. So right now I'm just going to change this to false. And what's going to happen when I set it to false, it's going to check against the actual configuration and it's going to check against the actual configuration and do some kind of evaluation and comparison and say, hey, you're setting this to false, but it had to be true actually. So I'm just going to run this now and then let's see if we're going to have anything, if it's going to pass or it's going to fail again. I hope I saved it here. I saved that. So we're just going to wait a couple of seconds. And now exactly what I wanted. So you can see one of the tests failed and one passed as well. So yeah. Okay. So this actually goes to show that our test is working, guys. So it's actually very good that you run the unit testing for your modules. Okay. So I'm going to stop this video here. And the next video, I'm going to go ahead to the deployments, right? So the deployment, we have various um, for our dev environment, we have a production environment, and we have our test environments, right? So we can actually go into the the variables for the values for the development environment. You can see that the EKS cluster is showing dev here, and we have this version, and this is our capacity. Uh, we have the minimum and maximum value set to 1 because this is just a dev environment and we're using a T3 small, right? So for the prod environment, we have everything large, so this is A large, this is I large, and we're using three availability zone, and you can see this is prod as well. So the test bars, and okay, so this is exactly what we have here. So I'm just going to stop this video here. So in the next video, I'm going to go ahead with the deployment so we can go into AWS and see what we deployed already. All right, thank you for your time on this Terraform unit testing with Terraform. All right, so have a good day.